Hello viewers, and welcome to another episode of Your Comments Chat. It's been a while since I've done one. For those new to the channel, it's basically where I look at some of my videos and I give you a verbal response to some of your comments, because I feel sometimes that even though I answer as many questions as I can, sometimes I feel like people don't always get the tone. They think, they think you're having a go at them when actually you're agreeing with them, or you're just trying to show them something new or give them a different viewpoint. So I think to myself, well, it adds a bit of humanity, bit of personality to the comments, and I thought I'd go through them here and see what we were discussing on Isle of Man TT. There'll be some more TT3 content coming soon, new preview content, and in all of the content I try to answer as many questions for you guys as possible. So I'll go through some of what's coming later in the video, but let's just go through some of the comments, see what we have here, and have a little chat about it. And I can also thank you as well for some of your comments. So Jeff here, fantastic in-depth video, Alan. Just what I like to see. The interview with the devs was great and answered a lot of my questions there too. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for watching the whole video as well. I know developer interviews, they're not always listened to by as many people, but often you get the best information as long as you're prepared to answer the right questions. And I think that it's, and I say that it's always very controlled with what developers can and can't say when a product is in development. So you have to ask the right questions or you won't get anywhere. Great preview out of all the racing games this year, Nigel says. This is one of my most anticipated titles, currently in a timeline where, in my opinion, a lot of the larger studios that pump out releases every year are a bit stale. Love having a relative newcomer growing. Hopefully it will lit up a fire for Milestone, under Milestone. How I wish Raceward could make a WSP game, World Superbike game, I can spit it out, rather than Milestone using MotoGP 21 as their base for SBK. Okay, so SBK was a little bit rushed in terms of whatever they were doing. The fundamental differences in handling obviously weren't there. I didn't review it. I don't know. I think someone was a bit frustrated at my lack of, I guess, appreciation of MotoGP, and so I wasn't supplied a copy to review of that game, and that was it. I was busy doing other things. I will be covering MotoGP this year. I'll see if there's any difference to the handling, but my fundamental problem with the handling on those games is slow speed oversteer. It's a real issue on them, and that's where my issue is. And I'll mention that on a later video and demonstrate it at some point as well. In fact, you can just go on Twitch, watch people play it. You'll see people all over the place. I hope TT3 knocks it out the park. Well, in terms of the bike handling, you just could not ride this game, TT3, with the handling they have on the Milestone games. It's just not instantly responsive and intuitive enough for that. Okay, John says, John Morgan, looks promising. The camera still moves in a strange way when going over some bumps, but like you say, I'm going to purchase this and put hours into it. Can't wait for the real TT to start. Fingers crossed for Harrison to beat Hickey this year. Okay, so the camera works pretty well. Again, like all these games, it takes a bit of getting used to. It's different to previous Isle of Man games. You will initially go through a learning curve where you're falling up. Not all of you, but a lot of you watching will go through a learning curve where you're falling off the bike a lot. You just need to get through that phase. And for me, and I will mention this on a later video as well, the open world, once you start just cruising, relaxing, turn off the racing line and just cruise. And I just sat there, the rain started falling. I thought, wow, this looks great. I'm cruising here, I'm cruising there, I'm assessing my speed through the corners. I wasn't putting myself under pressure. I think whenever you're racing on Isle of Man, you're putting yourself under pressure to maximize each corner. And if you just cruise for a moment, just enjoy the biking, and the open world just enables you to do that. And there's some great roads on the Isle of Man, and they're really nicely modeled now. Liam says, hoping there'll be a sidecar DLC. Feel like it could do an amazing job with it. There won't be a sidecar DLC, unfortunately. There are reasons behind that at the moment. I don't know what the official reason is, but I've spoken to developers on Iron Man TT1, and there was a lot of resource that went into creating the sidecars that could have gone into making the other tracks better, that could have gone into making the handling on the bikes better. Whenever you're making a game, you have a certain amount of resource, and you say, what do we want? Do we want 5 new tracks for photo mode and 10 new bikes? or do we want sidecars? And they have to make that decision based on what people are playing. I personally would love to see sidecars, but that's a discussion. What should sidecars handle like? What are they going to feel like with a controller? What is the feeling that people expect? There's no way they're going to make sidecars that's going to keep everybody happy, because if anything, it's going to feel like more like a car handling because of the system that's used. You can't have it too complicated with the rider on the back throwing his weight around, and you could say, oh well, the second stick controls the rider on the back's weight in some way. You could do it in a similar way to Redout, which uses a similar air brake system, and consider it that it's like a form of air brake system that you're using. But again, where does the handling start? It's quite a complicated discussion when you actually sit down with physics programmers and say, right, fundamentally what's happening and how do we control that with a stick? I'm going to mention that on an upcoming video as well, the challenge of making bike games. Bob Jones, great videos I've run. I also watched the Traxing video and podcasts, and I'm more than excited for the previous TD games. Good man. Alias, amazing as always, Alan. I agree with you about the more moody weather being nicer looking. It has always been the case in Killers and Engine games. Yeah, you'll see a few clips I've snuck in there of a later build of the game, and the wet weather looks stunning. I mean, the best of this game, we haven't shown it yet. We haven't shown the best of this game. It's a bit frustrating. I wanted to show you guys a lot more, but we've got to wait for new developments. There's got to be new builds coming, and then I can show you more of the game. But soon there will be a full preview looking at the weather, the times of day, the other tracks. There's lots and lots to find, and also just general exploration of the map. It's great. O'Neill Black says, nice interview. I always love his channel so much. He gave us some more peeks and gameplay. I really appreciate. Questions I'd ask them is, where is the bug splatter effect on the bike visor and helmet visor that was seen in TT Iron Man 2? Really disappointed they took it out. And also, will there be a community where topics can be added for features or stuff can be voted on to be added to, so our voices can be heard? Again, thanks for gameplay. I can't wait to play. I can tell you right now, developers do read these comments. So this is why I say to people, post respectfully. You know, if you have ideas and you have notes on the game, give some positive feedback. You know, for example, take the system there. I'm aware that a lot of work has gone into the remade physics, the bikes, the cameras on the bikes. There has been a lot of work gone into the visor. There were some visor effects people weren't happy with last time, lighting effects. A lot of work's gone into that, and I guess the resource has gone into that rather than adding the bug splat effects this time. So it's just one of those things. It was either improve the bug splat effects and have lighting that doesn't look right on the visors, or improve the lighting on the visors and the bug splat effects probably come later. Either way, I hear you on that sort of stuff. I can say bug splat effects they're not for everyone. You know, it's one of those things that you can turn off and turn on. Then you say, right, what percentage of people like it or dislike it? Probably a certain percentage. So in the end, you're really only talking about 20% of players that play it like the bug splat effect, and only 10% of players ride from that particular viewpoint on the bike. So you're 20% of the 10%. You get an idea of how small the amount of people that do care about those things are. Yes, I care about the details, but at the same time, I'm trying to get across is the concept of development. You know, the resource to go around. But it is noted, you know, to even have the option on there, just of a nice big bug splat. The Spirit of Chance says, I still play the TT2 games, the best bike game for me because of sense of speed. I hope this game could be much better. Countdown. Absolutely. The sense of speed is going to come up in debate. I've seen it mentioned by people on Twitter. The sense of speed for me is great. It's perfect. I like the sense of speed. Whatever viewpoint, when you're riding from different viewpoints, so say you're driving in a car game, for example, if you're at bumper cam, you get the fastest point of view, the narrowest, fastest point of view. The further you pull away, the more that sense of speed reduces, the more time it gives you. So in a way, it's an advantage being behind the car. On a bike game, it's similar. Of course, because of the rider, of the movement of the rider and the bike, for me, I much prefer being behind the bike, because there's several things happening. You're not just turning a bike, it's the rider as well. And that's all part of the motion of going through a corner. But the feeling of speed is not as accentuated as it is in TT2, but I kind of like that. I thought it was slightly overdone in TT2, and to the detriment of the gameplay when it came to the dynamic camera. It just didn't work for me. I did tell the developers that. I just didn't get on with it, and I've been quite open with that from the off. Alan, Franz says, Alan, any information about difficulty settings? TT1, TT2 were absolutely punishing for me. There's no information on the difficulty settings. I can tell you right now, it's not easy. The game is a tough game. You know, it is what it is. There are restrictions around licensing. When you're making a game, say it's Formula One, you say, oh, I'd love to have a go-karting mode and bring up my driver so I could start just learning and then become a better driver in a lower Formula, and then Formula 3, and then Formula 2, and then Formula 1. And then you go to the FIA and they say, no, you can have Formula 1 cars, nothing else. So you're beginner going straight into a Formula 1 car, and there's nothing you can do about it. There are similar restrictions with all these licensed games where you'd say, cool, I'd love to have like a bike training mode where I could go onto a starter bike and, you know, ride with the sort of lower classes and get used to it and build speed, or even have a slower bike, you know, much slower bike than this. But either way, it is tough, and there's no getting away from that. Even the single player mode is quite brutal at times. I will say that, and I will point this out in a later video, there is a process in terms of, like, your bike just isn't good enough when you start the game. It does get better as you upgrade your bike, and that's the irony, is that it gets easier the more you play it, but it is tough early on, and that's why I'm going to make a video looking at the difficulty and getting through that, because I needed to get through it. You know, even when I showed the video the other day, I crashed. You know, I've crashed so many times learning each section, but it does take time. It does take time. But I think once it clicks with you in terms of the handling, and I will say, try to turn off the racing line. The map in the bottom corner is essential. Don't bother with manual gears for most of us watching. Manual gears is great when you know the gear for the corner, the correct braking, the correct entry, the correct exit gear. If you don't know that precisely, you're going to be in the wrong gear and you're just going to fly off the track. And that's why automatic works much better. And that's why combined brakes also work very well. I've done a lot of runs with separate brakes. Very hard to get the front braking right. You lose the front end a lot when you're using separate brakes until you get it just right. It's a lot of practice. So for those of you out there who are beginners, combined brakes, essential. The beginner handling is a great way to start. Work on one section at a time. Well, you won't work on one section at a time. You'll be working through the one player career mode, but just give yourself time. And again, the open world, it's a great way to explore it. Gert says, rims is amazing. These physics in TT is a must buy for me, which is great to hear. Joel says, game looks and sounds really nice. Traffic on side roads would be great. It would be great. I say it would be great. I mean, I suppose you're taking it to a different type of game then. And the amount of development that would require an AI of cars driving around the map would be immense. But certainly something for the future, either way. It gives me different ideas for different types of games, though. KGO3. It is a great video. Good work on that. Thank you. Finally, a video about bikes that made by you that I honestly like. Wow. I don't know if it's a compliment or not. By the way, is there a possibility to make custom rider and bike, change leather colours? I haven't been through all of the customization options yet, but there are more customization options, and I will look into that again on a preview for a later video. So I'll take the compliment from it. ADY Jury says, it looks a lot better than the last two. The last two were close to being a decent game if they ever bothered to patch all the handling problems. Would you say the handling on this one is close to MotoGP or Ride Series? It would be great if they released a demo so people like me who feel they got ripped off with the last two could at least try this one before committing our hard-earned cash. Okay, a couple of conversations there. Demo, let's talk about that first. Producing a demo means stopping making the game and working on the demo. And that's why a lot of the big companies can have, you know, Microsoft's this world, they can have demos on their games. They've got enormous teams and resource. Development teams of this size, they just don't have the budget to do a demo. There probably will be a demo after launch. I say probably, there might be, there might not be. But if they're going to do one, it won't be until after the game comes out. It's just one of those things with resource and working on the game. And really, we want them working on the game. Would I say the handling is close to MotoGP or the Ride Series? Neither, thankfully. Neither. And I'm very pleased about that because of the type of handling those games have. They work very well on the various track-based systems that they have. But in terms of I say very well, I don't think they even work that well on that. And I watch a lot of experts online constantly crashing. I don't like the direction that Milestone have gone in with their, in my eyes, delayed handling system. And as I've mentioned before, the issues with slow speed oversteer. That is the problem. You know, when you go into a corner and you're going too slow, oh dear, you're going to have to turn the bike the other way and then you go off or you overcut it. It's just not right. It's that the feeling just isn't there. JB27, how is the clutch? I noticed Ride 4 that if you assign the clutch to L2 as a biting point and when you slowly release it, it gradually applies more power to doing a wheelie, making the bike lift and fall as you press and release. L2 in rims racing, however, when you assign L2 once, it hits the biting point, it engages the clutch all the way similar to pressing the clutch with a regular button. In Isle of Man 2, there was no clutch at all. How is the clutch in this game? That's a good question. I've only used the LB button for clutch to date. And that is literally where you just hold the clutch like a handbrake at the start and then let it go and hope that the electronics stop the rear wheels from spinning, which they do. So other than that, I couldn't say at this stage, but it's something to investigate. Something to investigate at a later date, and it's something to talk to the developers about maybe in terms of how the clutch works. Again, unless you're using a manual gearing solution, which almost nobody will be. I mean, it's really not a major deal. So I actually only use that at the start at this stage. And then thankfully, I don't do anything manual from there. The game is just too difficult to actually learn all the gears for all the corners. I mean, if you think this lap is long with its 20-minute laps, you guys haven't seen the other tracks yet. I mean, they are huge. They are huge tracks. It's not like they're 1 minute or 2 minute laps. I mean, there's massive laps in there. So the amount of learning you guys are going to have to do learning those tracks is big. It's definitely a challenge. Kadan says, how does the riding feel compared to the last games? I've gone through that in the preview, so I will say check out the preview, and I've gone through that in some more detail there, so I won't go through all that again. But suffice to say, it's a step forward. It is a step forward in the handling in a really good way. Off-grid Madman says, love both previous games, especially TT2. I can't stand any of the bike games like MotoGP or Ride because I don't like to play in third person. So my question is, in cockpit views, is it similar to TT2? Or is it like the old other games in that the weird pendulum style of movement that makes you feel like the base of the bike is moving under you? That's a deal breaker for me, and I think many high-level TT2 players. Okay, very hard for me to give a straight answer to that. There are two handling options. You have one, which is just in the video just there, where you can have the bike swinging, or you can lean with the bike. There's actually two viewpoints there to enable you to do the same and choose the way you want to ride. It's different for some people. Some people want a stable view where the bike is under them and where they're lining themselves up. Some people want it in a different way. It all depends on how you play, but they do have multiple options in there, and they have put a lot of work into, you know, making it available to everybody and get the handling on the bike just right. With what I've played on the bike, and I've put some time into it, it works well so far. Certainly better than most bike games, but it's a nuanced thing as to what you're looking at and where you want the bike to go and how you assess your speed. It's going to be very different for everybody. Von Barrel says, what do you think about throttle and brakes? Are they divided into several parts? On, off. Well, I mean, I couldn't really say divided into several parts. I mean, obviously you've got analog controls on your controller, The rest is handled by your gearing. So I really couldn't say any more than that. I don't think I can possibly go into the kind of depth of that, because again, you're talking about taking it to a level that would require, come back to me in 2 years' time and I might answer that question. It's that level of skill that you're getting to there. I mean, for me right now, riding laps of the track without crashing is an achievement. I generally, on the old game, would always crash once or twice a lap. I'm still getting there at the moment. It is quite challenging, especially when you're really pushing and say the weather changes. It's a pain. These guys, they're so brave. Look at that race, by the way. Awesome. I loved recording that race. I thought it was just racing with the AI. It was good fun. But, you know, that was very much an early development build there, and we wait to see what the final AI is going to be like as well. Okay, hold on. Let's have a glass of water. Okay, so I can't read that username, but that username, I had fun with part 1 and later part 2. Part 3 doesn't look that much better to me. Now I'll have to buy it when it hits virtual stores, or at least not the price it's asking. I mean, as I say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. If you can't see the differences available here, then obviously it's not the one for you, and wait for it. You know, it's whatever you're looking for, what details you see. But I stay on the ball. I hope for nice races with a helmet camera, purpose immersion. Absolutely. And that's what you're seeing there. Look at that. Cool race going on there with a helmet cam. That's the other helmet cam, by the way, the one where you're sort of on the bike leaning with it. It's pretty intense. Right. Bang boat. Yes, TT2 had better grip and feel, but that camera. I liked rims, but for what they tried to achieve, and it did give the bike a better sense of mass and momentum. I felt at home on rims, so they bring that to TT3. It should be good. They've developed that and moved it forward. I use onboard a lot in my bike games, but TT and TT2 reflections were so bad. That's now been fixed, as you can see on the visor there on the video. So it looks better here. I'm glad the emphasis on the island. I look forward to being able to roam parts of it. It's a shame they couldn't use the Southern 100 track, but that might be licensed to Milestone Studios for Ride 4. There are always licensing challenges, including other tracks with the Isle of Man. Really looking forward to this title. I'm glad to see them continue to develop the title. Isle of Man TT is the greatest spectacle in motorcycling ever. Now, if we can have some historic bikes even as a DLC, that would be magic. Let's hope so one day. I mean, again, we don't know what the restrictions are in terms of the licensing issues. I often find with developers, it's about building a relationship with the licensee, and when they know they make quality games and they reach that level of quality, then they start to get a little bit more room to maneuver and they build a relationship. And hopefully Isle of Man organisers will see this game, they'll play it and enjoy it, it will do well, and then that way they'll say yes, you can have more and more additional content in there. In free roam, will you be able to ride with other riders, multiplayer for races? It would be great to ride free roam. It's not available. Again, within the realms of the development budget and time available, that's a big step up. Multiplayer is complicated and expensive, but let's see how we go. If this game sells well, if it makes a big difference, then you might see that change in the future, or not on this game, but on future games if they develop them. License. I was hoping that the game includes other Irish road races. Yeah, this one is focused on the Isle of Man, but the bright side is you get an open world mode, a more fleshed out career mode, and the other tracks, which are all old TT tracks of various types, are highly detailed, equal to the main track in terms of detail, great to explore and fun to ride as well. So look at that. Ratty says, where is the sense of speed gone? I'd also like to see the onboard view. The sense of speed is still there. The sense of speed is fantastic, but the accentuated sense of speed in TT2 is gone, and I'm pleased about that. Other than that, I have absolutely no problem with the sense of speed at all, and I don't know what people are on about when they're complaining about the sense of speed in this game. It's very odd. People want the bike going at 500 mile an hour or something. It's very strange. I hope it includes free roam, Chuck Norris says. It does, Chuck. Yeah. Now, Napster looks good, but I've never played a bike game where it feels fun to play as the bikes in Burnout Paradise. I know it's an arcade style game, but the bikes felt great in that game. I've not played anything that comes close to it. Okay, I'm going to look at that on a feature, an upcoming feature, looking at bike handling and the way bike games are made, who they're made for, who they're listening to. There's a real difference in terms of different types of people that play bike games. But I agree. My favourite bike games, I'm going to talk about that. There's a lot of fun for people. If you had an option to have arcade handling in TT, where you could just angle the bike for the corner in a really arcade-like way, be great. Be great. Then you just need to add road rash mode, don't you? Road rash violence mode handling, where you're just racing everybody, hitting them all with big sticks on your way around. You know, add a cartoon filter to the mode, make it unrealistic, and then you can do it. Right, I love noodles, hyper. Marco says, not really interested in career-based game to unlock better upgrades for the bikes to get better experience and gain faster laps around a mountain circuit. I know the TT circuit like the back of my hand, so doing career, unlock better parts, pointless to me. I don't have the patience for this mode, unfortunately. I'm out from this one unless there was a DLC to boycott the career mode with unlocks, upgraded parts already available. It looks a lot better than previous games, just a shame it's career based and your ultimate goal. Marco, it is not the game for you. I can tell you that. It's not the game for you. A lot of people out there really like a deep one-player mode that's going to give them lots of longevity, exploring the island, exploring the new tracks, upgrading their bike, understanding their parts while learning the course. And they don't all know the course as you do. So though I appreciate you like the bit you like, these guys have to make a game for everybody that makes it a process, and eventually you unlock the course and you can enjoy it all day long. But if it's too much hassle for you, then yeah, I would say stick to another TT game. Creedor, thanks for this preview. I love TT games. The first person cam works well. I don't like playing in third person. It does work well. There we are. It's got different viewpoints. It's got 5 different viewpoints in there, so they've got something for everybody. Jerry Joe, Alan, you've been through enough lately. We don't want you breaking your arms and legs. Absolutely. I've broken my arms and legs about 500 times just testing this game out over the past few weeks. It is a challenge. It is a challenge. And when I walk away for a week or 2 weeks and I come back and play it again, and I check out a new build and I forget completely how I was playing it before, and I have to get used to it again. So it does take time. I'm testing out different control pads as well. I will say the control pad you're using, depending on your travel of your triggers, makes a huge difference. A huge difference. So there is that. I've been using the old Revolution controller. I changed recently to the Revolution X controller, and the travel of the triggers is not quite as much. So it's a bit more sensitive on the brake in particular. Launch control start would be a nice touch. Essentially, that's kind of what you've got with the clutch system. Just lift off and launch, and away you go. Hay says, I just hope it'll be more like TT2 than rims. I got rims, but not liking it so far. Hates how it constantly stops the gameplay to explain stuff. And riding on the bike doesn't feel as good to me as TT2. Played that a lot more using an on-bike view without helmet. Hope you get a career without the fake tracks. It's not what I like in TT2. Love driving on the Isle of Man, even though I'm not the best at it. But the fake tracks don't feel right to me. Well, there's no fake tracks in it now. There's real tracks. They're just real Isle of Man TT tracks, and they're modelled to the same standard. As for TT2 and rims, a couple of things you mentioned there is the gameplay stops to explain stuff. There's none of that really. If you don't want to do it, there's an open world mode, and you can explore different things on that island. If you don't want to explore that, you can just go on with the next race. There's none of the pit stops and all that sort of stuff. I'd say that was the most repetitive part of rims, was doing the pit stops and all the different QTE type things you had to do. You don't have to do that now. It was fun the first few times you did it, but then got old real quick. Handling wise, no, we have moved on, because the camera wasn't the dynamic camera system. It wasn't all there before. I really couldn't say if you're going to like this or not, because it's closer to rims than it's a mix. It's moved forward because they've made much more detailed tyre physics this time. I had to move on from TT2. The physics just were a bit basic in comparison to what we have now. Steve O Magician, I will 100% stick to what I know, and that's never play a motorbike game unless it's on realistic settings. I've never made it easy, and I've topped all the leaderboards. I haven't checked in a year, but on TT2 I was number one on 2 races, the full 6-lap race on 1000cc and the 3-lap classic bike. I was also number one for a while with the fastest recorded lap, the 1000cc. I know that got beat at some point, but I had a really big lead on the other 2, and it's using rims racing physics. I'm pretty confident that it'll be a step setting lap records on release day. As I've played, we don't swear on this channel, I've played out of rims, and constantly the top daily challenges were timed, but that's only on Xbox. I really hope it's fully multiplayer leaderboards so I can see good times are. So fingers crossed I get to see all of you pinned on the mountain. Okay, so there will be online leaderboards. It's cross-play this time. There'll be regular competitions and events. So Steve-O, you're going to have an awful lot more competition this time than you've had in the past, and I look forward to seeing what people are up to and what they can achieve. Let's see now, just while we're getting on with the recording now. HK Man says 2511. Is there more classes in the works? No, at the moment there isn't. Sidecars, been over that already, so we'll see if we ever see that. As for other classes, again, it might depend on the Isle of Man organisers. Maybe you'll see that in a future game. I think the first thing was fixing the core physics for the super sport and super bike classes. I'll be going straight to realistic. I've got way too many hours on all the other TT games. Again, another realistic player. I have to admit, I enjoyed the game more on the intermediate and realistic settings. For me, it really comes to life a bit more, but it does take time getting used. You've got to know where those bumps are and how to approach them, when to keep the bike straight, what to do if you get into a little bit of trouble and a little bit of understeer. Because sometimes you can aim towards a corner, a bump affects you and you're going a bit wide, and you've got to have a lift off and just coast for a second. You lose a lot of time, surprisingly, just with all that. So you've got to get it just right. You know, when you're really committed, the margin for error is very high. Is this version of the game made by Milestone? No, it's not Aid. They're doing a good job of wide range of games with handling. I played the first 2 versions on TT, and the handling physics was an issue. It's been improved this time, all discussed in that video. So there's definite progress there. Were for half, I'm hyped. Hyper. Lee says, what I want from a TT game is realistic career mode, not a free roam. I know licensing costs are a hurdle, possible issue for real circuits, but the first game had some amazing fictional circuits that felt real. Some, I think, were based loosely on real circuits. Why can't we get them back? Bring the Irish, Scottish, Welsh, English road races back. The upgrade system looks great. I enjoy Rim's upgrade system. The physics do look improved. The sound seems better too. But the whole point of TT games is to give me authentic TT experience. Riders just don't free roam around the island looking for events. I'd love a structured career mode with an actual road racing calendar building up to the pinnacle of it all, the TT. I'm sure many others feel the same as well. Sure, add the free roam aspect, casual. Right, okay, let's talk about that. It is impossible to add all these other tracks and create a realistic career mode. You either have a bike game with these other tracks in, or you have the Isle of Man. Can't have both, just the way it works. In terms of the resource, because I think they focused on, let's focus on the island and focus on these old historical TT tracks, or bin those and just focus on the old tracks. I think they felt it was nice to have new tracks in the game. You're going to have new tracks, new stuff to explore. You might find that because these are based on real tracks, absolutely based on real tracks with full detail and new physics, you might enjoy it a lot more in the process. Again, it's a decision that's taken in terms of developing a game, in terms of the time you have to develop it, the technology you have, and the budget available. And it's one of those things. I guess if you ask the developers what they say they'd say, well, we want all these different types of bikes. We want classic bikes, we want sidecars, we want 20 different circuits, we want a full training mode for beginners. None of that's possible. And sometimes there's other licensing issues with conflict. So one bike company says we're not going to have those bikes in the game. One rider says something about this or whatever. It's a complex mess. It has to be done under one banner, run by the franchise holder. Futuristic Viper, do you think they will have the sidecars as DLC? No. Law, will there be super twins in this game? There'll be just the super sport bikes and the super bikes. Next one, Science Guy, does the game have decent TV style replay function this time? Now I've said here, alas no, that's a feature that needs improvement. I'm just going to re-answer that. They have amended all of the bike cameras in the games. All the on-bike cameras are the authentic cameras in the replays now. They have improved the TV replay cameras, but for me, it's still an aspect that needs work. I wouldn't say, and if I didn't tell you, because, for example, there might be a bike. The cameras were already on the bikes in the previous games. You know, they were in there enough the right places. They just had to move them here, move them there. So for anyone watching the replay, you won't see a huge difference. Definitely not the difference in TV replay coverage I would like to see. It also brings out the handling system they've used more in the replays. And the problem with a game, the more playable and fun a bike game is, the less realistic it looks in a replay. And that's going to be something, again, I'm going to look at on a video in the future, so you guys can see the difference between what's actually going on when you're playing and how it looks in a replay. It is going to be a challenge to get a realistic looking bike replay, because when you want a realistic looking bike replay, what are you looking at? You've got a bike coming towards a corner, then the biker moves his body and he prepares himself and he moves into the corner. With a control pad, you've got a stick and you go like that. So the minute you move the biker's body's got to suddenly move to catch up. It just doesn't look right. So, or you have an option where you delay that stick movement and then the biker moves and then the bike moves. Looks more realistic in replays, creates massive understeer, and you get that in MotoGP and Ride. JV Tech, some clips of the footage, the sensor speed is really good. Others, it doesn't look as fast. Any reason for this? Different builds, purely down to viewpoint use. If you're close to the bike, you get a faster sensor speed, and this camera here, I'm using a far away viewpoint. It reduces the sensor speed. Hell, it still feels quick to me, especially when you're riding. I mean, it's eye of the needle through those corners. Are we getting Steve says, are we getting 60 FPS on next gen consoles? We are, and I'm going to come back to this in just a moment. Right, back. Okay, we had a hard cut there just because I needed a new glass of water. I was losing my voice. Okay, so are we getting 60 FPS on next gen consoles? We are. That's the target. As far as I understand it, that is the target. We'll wait and see. I don't know if it's going to be quality and performance modes, or if they're just going to go for, you know, full on performance mode, but that is the target. Okay, Metal Gaming. Isle of Man 1 was pretty good with 60km route track. I hope Isle of Man 3 is going to be just as good. So please don't mess up the first person view or the online possibilities. Make a clever room where online gamers can meet up. We'll wait and see what happens with the online modes. I think the problem with online modes is there is going to be online lobbies and stuff like that. I haven't tested any of that or seen any of that because it's not in the builds we've tested. It's expensive. It's expensive and you need a lot of players. And I think with this one being cross-play, it will build a bigger online base. And if it works well online and people like it and it sells well, then perhaps in future versions you'll have more and more online features. But online features are always expensive to add in developing games. So we'll wait and see. The Duke. This game is much better than Ride 2. The sound is more realistic. They have worked a lot on the audio. And we've got Lizard get Pobiso, GP Bikes dev on board. He'll make it good. I mean, I've looked at what he does on track racing. You know, there's some elements that are great, some elements that might not appeal. Does the system he have in his games work on a street racing responsive game like this? A game that needs to appeal to more people in a mass market? I don't think so. But either way, and I've seen a lot of people playing it that don't necessarily gel with that style. They fall off a lot. Would you fall off a real bike just cruising around a course in that way? No, you wouldn't. It's the point. You start to fall off when you start to really push. You really need to understand your bike. So I don't think there's one developer that has all the answers to everything in that way. I think the Race Ward team are clearly very experienced when it comes to biking, understanding motorbike physics and understanding what you need to make them both realistic yet intuitive at the same time. They need to be realistic yet intuitive. This is a big challenge. Steve says, sadly, it looks the same to me as the first one, as far as control is. Steve, you're wrong there. There's been a big steps forward made. I know you can't see the difference, but it really is huge. The slightest movement on a tiny little stick has the bike snapping from one lean to another, regardless of speed. That is not the case. I can tell you there is some weight to the bike, and it works very well so far. So especially preparing the bike going into a twisty chicane, you really need to throw the bike the other way on exit. So it's not what you've seen in your observation. The gyro and weight does not seem possible. It is there. You can't snap a bike at 160 from upright to full lean in a nanosecond. I would say the riders really ride this track at incredible speeds. The way they move the bike from side to side is always impressive because they prepare the bike to move it in that way. So I couldn't really say it's different in that way. A game will always have a different approach to it to a real bike. And again, I'll explain that on another video, but that's down to understanding how video games work as to real bike handling. You will never get real bike handling conveyed in a video game perfectly. It is not possible. It is always going to be an interpretation of what a bike should do and an interpretation for a player to understand how to turn in and maximize that bike performance. So that's one of those things there. Vito, will you get the rewind option? I don't think it has rewind option, though I wish it did. Jay, I'll stick to original. Cheers, free to play. If this is best the next gen has to offer, then take your money, not mine. Absolutely, Jay. Listen, it's each to their own. If it's not for you, you want to stick to the original, do that. You'll be missing out because it has made big steps forward. SC, need to get rid of the clutch animation, quick shifter. Tim Davies says, I've got no comment on that. The animations for me in the main seem pretty good. Tim Davies at 11:09, there aren't many trees either side of the road, part of the island. I've no idea why they've textured or done things. In some poor physics, surely the rider should have fallen off. I don't quite know what that bit is, but I can't look at it right now. I think I've written here about, what have I put here? I guess it depends what the reference photos were taken. Who knows? Who knows? Thankfully, the rider does have a bit of flexibility, so this is a good thing. I see this quite often about, you touched a bit of pavement there or something. You do need that bit of flexibility in a bike game. You've got to have some flexibility. But then saying that, you get funny things happen in real life, and you say, how the hell did that guy stay on the bike? And if you put that in a video game, you'd say, bad physics. And we see it all the time. You need to make a game approachable. If we made this full simulation, said, right, we're going to have a full realistic simulation, right? You'll get a crappy bike, and you'll be allowed to ride the Isle of Man in 3 years' time. So you've got to do 2,000 hours of play, and then we'll give you a bike you can ride on the Isle of Man and make it realistic. No. A lot of these guys have been riding bikes every year of their lives for the last 20 years. If we made games that required that level of expertise to be able to play your game, no one would ever get anywhere. So you want to make something realistic and simulation, but it's got to sell. If it doesn't sell, there'll be no bike games. And if we don't get beginners, I feel there's this sort of snobby simulation entitlement to so many gamers that we want a game to be hard as possible and not easy for people to get into. We need it to be easy for people to get into. And if they want to turn off the assists, they can. If they want to make it a simulation, they can. I really dislike the criticism of beginners as well that I see quite often online. No, we need beginners to get into this. We want more people enjoying it. We want more fans of the TT. You're all in one group together. More fans enjoying this game is a good thing. If it was up to me, I'd have much easier beginner modes, honestly, all the way through. I'd have you smacking into walls and not falling off your bike, in terms of getting into learning the track, because it really is difficult, and less than 1% of players will complete this track without falling off the bike. As I say, the new tracks are really hard as well. This game is hard as nails. Artec, TT Isle of Man 2, right on the edge. He's got a bit of gameplay there. Yep, there we are. Lovely. Yes, I'm rating TT2 was too hard for my brain. Not for me. I mean, it's a hard game. I can't get away from that. I actually think it's easier than TT2 because the moving dynamic camera on TT2 made it more difficult. Roy, disappointed that he dumped the other fictional Irish-British tracks. Free roam has no interest to me personally. You would like to have seen a lot of official tracks in there. Yeah, none of those are going to be in the game with the Isle of Man TT, unfortunately. But it's just one of those things. It's not possible. I can see why they had a choice. Do you want 5 fake tracks done up, or do you want 5 real tracks at full detail put in the game? They've gone with the real tracks at full detail. These are massive tracks, very challenging. I think they've made the right call myself. No sidecars, Jam, where are the Irish tracks? That's all discussed. Lee, that's discussed. Sense of speed, yeah, we've been over that. Lewis, physics don't look any better. The side to side seems really slow. I mean, whatever your perceptions are of physics, it'd be interesting to know sometimes where people do get their perceptions from. Graphics look like Super Hang-On in 1987. It's weird comments like that. Actually, do you know, Hang-On's a great game. Co-op, welcome back. Easter greetings. Thank you, Coop. All right then. That's it, everybody. I'm losing my voice. I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of chit-chat on your comments chat. Thank you for all the comments in the chat. I'll be making another video looking at the recent test drive Unlimited Solar Crown content as well. And that's it from me for now. As ever, more soon.